everyone, it's Alice, and today I thought we could have a chat about some upcoming book releases. There are a lot of cool books coming out in the next few months, and usually when I do these videos, I do like half a year at a time, but this time there are actually so many books that I'm just gonna do January to April, and then I'll do maybe another one in like early May or something, because there's just a lot of exciting new books coming out. Anyways, we should probably just get into it, and we're gonna start with some books coming out in January, and I think maybe some of these will have come out by the time you see this. The first one I have on my list is The Stolen Queen by Fiona Davis, and this is a historical fiction mystery, and the thing that caught my eye about this one is that a part of it is set in Egypt. It has two timelines. One is set in Egypt in the 1930s, I think, and then one is set in New York in the 1970s, and I know that we're following women in both of those perspectives. That's all I really know. I'm guessing there's some sort of like archaeology stuff in here, maybe like stolen artifacts, and I don't know. It sounds interesting, and I do really like historical fiction mystery. The second one I have is Water Moon by Samantha Sotto Yambao, and I'm not gonna lie, the thing that initially drew me into this is the cover, because the cover is really good, but the story sounds quite intriguing as well. It's like fantasy or magical realism, I'm not quite sure, but it says it's about a pawn shop in Tokyo where you can sell your regrets. And I don't know what that means, but it sounds very intriguing. Then we have a new book coming out from Grady Hendrix called Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. And any book with witch or witchcraft in the title or in the story, I'm gonna be interested in, because I love books about witches and things like that. And this sounds quite interesting. I think it's set in the 70s, and it's set at this home where young unwed women are sent when they're pregnant, and I think they go to there to like have their babies or something. I don't really know. It doesn't sound like a great place. And then there's something about a librarian giving a book to a girl that like changes everything, and I'm wondering if there's like a magic book. I don't really know. It sounds intriguing, and I do want to read more from this author. I've only read one book by them, but I want to read more, and this sounds like right up my alley. Next, we have one that just looks super cute. It's The Baby Dragon Café by A.T. Qureshi, which apparently is great for fans of Legends and Lattes, and I loved that book. It's like a cozy fantasy romance type book following this person who runs a baby dragon cafe, so it's for baby dragons and their humans. And then there's something about a local gardener, and I'm guessing that's where the romance comes in. I feel like this could go both ways for me, but it does sound very cute. Then we have another horror mystery type book. It's Old Soul by Susan Barker, and to be totally honest, I'm not sure I'm really grasping what this story is about, but it says it's about these two strangers who meet in an airport and find out that they have this connection, which I think has something to do how both of them have lost people in their lives, and they figure out that both of the people who died met this like dark-haired mesmerizing woman in the days before they died. I don't really know, but I have read another book by this author years and years ago. I don't know if I would like it as much now, but I really liked it back then, and so I would like to read more from this author, and that book was kind of strange too, so I feel like if I'm gonna read this, maybe I should just go into it blind. Then lastly for January, we have The Lamb by Lucy Rose, which is contemporary horror, and it says it's about this girl and her mom who live in the forest, and it seems like they don't really have a lot of contact with other people, except that they wait for strangers to knock on their door, and it seems like the mom does something weird to them. I don't really know. It sounds weird, but I like weird books, so it sounds intriguing. Moving on to February, first up here we have Voice Like a Hyacinth by Mallory Pearson, which does mention something about witches, and apparently it follows these art students who are super close to each other, so much so that they have their own language, and they are very devoted to their craft, so much so that they're willing to turn to the occult to sort of unlock their creativity, which sounds interesting. There's also something about a slightly creepy, very esteemed professor. There's something about a ritual. It sounds like it has a lot of interesting ingredients. Secondly, we have Victorian Psycho by Virginia Feito, which has a really creepy cover to it. I really like it. This is gothic historical fiction, and it follows this woman who is ready to be the perfect Victorian governess to this new family, but apparently when she's there, she starts like losing it a little bit, and it says something about her trying to stifle the compulsions of her past. I don't know what that means, but I want to read it. Then we have Under the Same Stars by Libba Bray, and the thing that caught my eye about this one is that I've read several books by Libba Bray and I've really liked them, so I'm excited to see her come out with something else. This is historical fiction and it follows three timelines. One is set in 1940s Germany, one is set in I think 1980s West Germany, and one is set in New York in 2020. That's all I really know. I do think there are some fantasy elements to this. I'm not quite sure, but it sounds intriguing and I would really like to read more from this author. Next, we have got The Sleeping Land by Ella Alexander, and this follows three archaeology students, I think, or assistants in the years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and they are at this excavation site, and that site is being run by this charismatic leader, I think. To be honest, I don't really know. I saw the archaeology thing and I was like, well, that's interesting. We've got another great cover for this next one. It's Even Beyond Death by Fiona Melrose, which is historical fiction. It's set in 1657, and it follows this marquis who is in need of a wife and an heir, but I think he actually ends up falling in love with a man, and the story is about what he's willing to do for love. It sounds interesting. Then we have the third book in a series that I am super excited about. It's Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales by Heather Fawcett. This is the third book in the Emily Wilde series, and I've loved the two previous books, so I'm super excited to see these characters again. It's historical fiction fantasy, and it follows this Cambridge scholar who studies fae and fairies, and her academic rival slash friend who is not what he appears to be at first. I'm so excited about this book, and the minute this is out in bookshops, I'm gonna get it. Moving on, we have Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, and I know not everyone likes these kinds of covers, but I love them. Whenever I see a cover with this kind of style, I'm immediately intrigued. This is a horror fantasy type book that I think is about vampires. It says it's about this married couple who have been together for a while and they are struggling. It seems they've tried to have children for years and it hasn't worked and they seem quite sad. And then something happens where this mysterious woman comes into their lives, and she's very pale and weak in the day but alive and vibrant at night, which sounds intriguing. I have no idea how this connects to the married couple or what happens, but it sounds very intriguing. Then we have The Sirens by Emilia Hart, and I read Wayward by this author last year, and even though I didn't end up loving that book, I am intrigued to read something else by her. And I think maybe this is about mermaids? I don't really know. It has two timelines. One is set in 2019 and one is set in the 1800s, and it says it's a book about female resilience and sisterhood, which is interesting. I do hope kind of that it is about mermaids though. That would be cool. We then have a book that I think is like cozy fantasy. It's Greenteeth by Molly O'Neill, and it says that this is about a monster that lives in a lake that becomes friends with a witch who gets thrown into that lake, and they end up going on some sort of magical quest. That sounds exactly like something I want to read. Then we have more fantasy with The Amber Owl by Juliet Marillier, and this is an author that I read one or two books by ages and ages ago, and then I just forgot to keep reading them, but I actually really want to get back into this author, and I kind of want to reread the book that I did read, or the books that I read. I can't remember how many I read, but I would like to read more from this author. This one is like fantasy. It follows this woman and it says that she lives on the edge of this farming village, and she lives with an unusual dog, and she has these rare gifts with animals, but it seems like she doesn't really get along with people that well. And then war breaks out, and who knows what happens, but It both sounds and looks interesting. Lastly for this month, we have Death Takes Me by Cristina Rivera Garza. And this is a mystery novel, but it sounds a little bit odd. It's about this professor who stumbles upon a dead body one night, I think, in an alley, and above the body there's some poetry written on the wall. And this professor ends up teaming up with a detective trying to solve the case, and then more bodies start showing up. I don't really know what's going on, but it sounds very mysterious. Then we're heading into March, starting with Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, which is a mystery, I think, set on an island close to Antarctica, which sounds like a great setting. And it's about this family that lives there that ends up taking in this woman who somehow makes it to the island during this huge, terrible storm. And I think the book is all about this family and these characters who have all of these secrets, which sounds intriguing. Then we have a book that caught my eye because of the title and the cover. It's The Otherwhere Post by Emily J. Taylor, which is a YA fantasy book, and it's about this young girl who has lost everything because I think her father did something. But then years later, she gets a letter that says that maybe her father was innocent, and because of that, she wants to find out what actually happened, and she starts as an apprentice for the Otherwhere Post, and I guess she learns some magic there and finds some answers. Next, we have a book that I am super excited about, but having read another book by this author, I am also a little scared. It's The Unworthy by Augustina Basterica, which is the author of Tender is the Flesh. This one is, I think, a dystopian book, and it says it follows this woman who lives in a cell in this convent, and she's a lower member of some sort of sisterhood, and it seems like the outside world is like going to hell. There's catastrophes everywhere and all kinds of things, and so I think she's supposed to be grateful for the fact that she's there and she's safe, but then this stranger comes into her life and starts questioning things and starts making her question things, and I don't know. Honestly, anything this author writes, I will read, which if you've read Tender is the Flesh, you'll know that that is probably a little bit messed up, but here we are. Then we have Softcore by Brittany Newell, which is a book about this dancer at a strip club who goes on a journey to find her ex-boyfriend who has disappeared, and this drags her into like a dark underworld of San Francisco, which isn't necessarily something that I would be super interested in, but the reason that this caught my eye is that apparently the writing is sort of like wild and dreamlike, and I think that might really work for me. I really like weird writing in that kind of way and sort of like hazy writing. So I think if the writing is really good, this could really work for me. Moving on, we have The Thorns, which says it's about this author who reconnects with someone she went to boarding school with, and they start talking, and I think the author sort of wants this old friend to look at what happened back then and face the sort of imaginary creature that they made. Although, is it imaginary? I don't really know. Apparently it's called The Glass Man or something like that, which sounds really creepy. And the story is all about these games that they used to play when they were in school. It sounds kind of messed up, but I want to know what's going on. Then we have another witch book. It's The Bane Witch by Ava Morgan, which says it's like practical magic meets Gone Girl, which I think could be interesting. It follows this woman who is from a long line of poison eaters, and the women in her line have used their powers to rid the world of evil men, which I definitely want to read. The next cover I really like. There's something about pomegranates on covers that just really works for me. It's Counting Backwards by Jacqueline Friedland, and this is a book that has two timelines. One is set in 2022 in New York, and it follows this lawyer who I think works pro bono, and she takes on this case about a mother trying to keep her daughter. And then the other timeline is set in, I think, Virginia in the 1930s or something like that, and it's about a woman who is caught up in a legal battle that has something to do with eugenics, and that sounds very interesting. Next, we have a new book coming out from Ashley Winstead. It's This Book Will Bury Me, and I've only read one book by this author, but I think I want to read this one as well. It's about this college student who unexpectedly loses her father, and in her grief, she turns to true crime to sort of distract herself, and she becomes obsessed with it. And she starts investigating this case of 3 missing or dead college girls, I think. Lastly, for this month, we have Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna van Veen, which is historical fiction horror, and again, we have vampires. I don't know if this is like the year for vampires or something, but it seems like a lot of vampire books are coming out, which I am into because I think I could get really into them even though I haven't read that many of them. This one follows 2 twins though, and one of them falls ill, and I think she starts to lose it a little bit, and the other twin is trying to keep her from being sent to an asylum, and she's trying to figure out what actually happened to her sister. How the vampires get mixed up in this, I don't know. Maybe one of the twins turns into a vampire? I don't know, but I would like to read it, and I really like this cover. The last month that we're gonna do is April, and first up here we have Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee, which sounds so good. It follows this Harvard art student who gets approached by this mysterious benefactor to do this impossible job, which is to steal back these artifacts that were looted from Beijing centuries ago. And they could lose everything if they do it, but I think they do it. Otherwise, I don't know what this book is about. But I think they do it, and they gather together this crew and they do this heist. It sounds really interesting, and it sounds like a fun story, or like an exciting story, but also that it's going to have some interesting discussions to it. Then we have a new book by Andrea Aciman. It's Room on the Sea, which I kind of just want to read because I loved Call Me By Your Name. I did read another book by Andrea Aciman last year that was kind of short, and it has a similar cover to this actually, and I didn't love it, but I just loved the writing in Call Me By Your Name, so I just want to find it in another one of his books. This one is a love story. It's about 2 people in New York over the summer who share an impossible love. I don't know. I want to read it, and I hope the writing is really good. We have another cool cover and cool title with The Book Club for Troublesome Women by Marie Bostwick, which is set in the 60s, and it follows, I think, 4 housewives. And I don't really know, but they have a book club, and I think the book is about the books that they read that change their lives and their viewpoints, and how these women and this book club sort of keeps them sane during very rapidly changing times. I don't really know, but I just think it sounds interesting. And any book with like a book club of women, there is something about that that I just really want to read. Next, we've got Rabbit Moon by Jennifer Haig, which is like a family drama, I think, and it's set in Shanghai. And I think it follows an American family, and the daughter of that family has gone to Shanghai, and she lives there, and she gets into an accident, and so the family goes there to meet her in the hospital, and, you know, I don't know how badly injured she is, I don't know how it's gonna go, but I think this is a book about, like, the intricacies of a family, and secrets, and I don't know, I really like these kinds of family drama. Then we have A Vanishing World by Sayaka Murata, which I am super excited about because I really like this author, but this book sounds wild. And I don't know if I really get it, but it's set in the future where, I think it's set in the future. It's set somewhere where it's normal to have sexless marriages, and all children are created by artificial insemination, and we follow a character who ends up in some sort of experimental city called the Paradise or something. I don't know what's going on. This author writes really weird books, but I really like them, and the last book that I read by this author, Earthlings, was wild. Like, that book was something else. So I don't really know what to expect from this, but I would like to read it very much. We're almost at the end now. Next, we have Friends of the Museum by Heather McGowan, and this follows these people who work at a struggling New York museum, and I think the book is set over 24 hours, so we only follow these characters for 24 hours, which I think is a really cool like way to write a book, and that's what makes me interested in this. Also, it's set in a museum, which I like, but I think we're following these characters, and they like the day that we're following them on, they have like an annual gala or something. And I wonder if maybe during this day someone dies. I don't really know, but it just sounds interesting. Second to last, we have a really weird looking book, but I kind of love this cover. It's Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin, which follows this woman who has left her fiance, she's lost her job, and I think she moves back in with her parents, so she moves back home. And she starts working in this flower shop. And this flower shop has a plant that eats people. I don't know what's going on, but I read that. I was like, oh, a human eating plant. I would very much like to read that. Then at the very end, we have Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker, which is a great title for a book, I gotta say. And it sounds a little like, I don't know where this is gonna go, but it follows a crime scene cleaner who isn't really bothered by the things that she sees in her job because she's seen a lot of stuff in her life. But then these bat carcasses start showing up at her crime scenes. That sounds insane, and I just feel like this book is gonna get kind of dark, which I'm very into. That was the last book, though, in my very, very long list of books coming out in the next couple of months. Now, I would love to know, first of all, I'm sure I missed some books, so if you know of any exciting books coming out, I would love to hear about it. And if you're interested in reading any of the ones that I mentioned, I would love to hear about that as well. Maybe some of you have already read them. I know some of you get, like, early books and stuff, so if you've read any, let me know. And that was kind of it for today. As always, thank you very much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you soon. Bye!